Welcome back to Against the Cage. My name is Jake Aryeh. I'm joined by my two esteemed colleagues, Scott Fontana and Erich Richter. Guys, how we doing? Doing
Ahoy.
good.
How we doing?
Alrighty. Well, guys, this whole week has been a huge guessing game for MMA fans, with UFC's International Fight Week getting closer and closer with no official main event. There's smoke in the air on whether DDP is injured or not for what would be a highly anticipated fight with Khamzat Chimaev, and Islam Makhachev's plans to eventually move to 170 have kind of been called into question as a potential roadblock for what would be another blockbuster fight against Ilia Topuria, which seems like low-hanging fruit at this point, but has also yet to be announced. Basically, we don't have a fight announced yet for International Fight Week, especially with Ilia Topuria being at lightweight. Eric, I'll start with you. What do you make of this Islam moving up to 170 for his next fight?
Well, I would like some clarity here at some point. I mean, Dana's been joking on Instagram. Like somebody commented on, like, he posted a picture of like a bull or something. He's doing that weird bull riding thing. Somebody commented on Instagram, like, we don't care about the bull. Announce the UFC 317 main event. He said, I'm never announcing it. So the UFC likes to play the game a little bit with the fans, and that's fair. But it is a little frustrating because the UFC doesn't really work with anybody unless it's in-house. So from my perspective, it'd be nice to have a little bit more clarity and something a little bit more official. But then again, we get into the issues of the way that they announce the fights. I've had an issue with that long-standing for a while. Um, this is the uncertainty here isn't particularly entertaining to me. Maybe I'm in the minority there. That's fair. But for me, like Ilya moves up to 155 here, and it seems like potentially Islam either doesn't want to fight him or wants to move to 170. I'd like to know which it is. There's a lot of conversations each way, but for me, like, it's not particularly entertaining or fun, the back and forth. Ilya said on the Joe Rogan podcast that he wants to fight Islam, and I don't know why that fight's not happening, so we go from there. Go from there, Scott.
I'm not necessarily in a rush for it to be Ilia Topuria who gets the next title shot against Islam Makhachev. I don't think it's the fight that needs to happen. This is not a dominant champion who moved up after clearing out his weight class. There's a lot of capable guys at 155 pounds that, frankly, if he had to fight someone before he got that title shot, I had no problem with that. If it also happened, I guess that would be okay too. But I'm also in that camp. I don't know what camp that is, but I'm not really all that worried right now about International Fight Week. And part of that is because between then and now, we have some big fights coming to our particular area. So me in particular, I'm still focused on what we know is about to come. But I get it. There's a lot of, like, we all want to know. Everybody wants the answers. We would love some clarity in particular about this particular weight class and how it affects maybe a second weight class as well. But I'm willing to wait it out a little bit more maybe than you guys are. I don't know. How do you feel, Jake?
So I have a few things. First off, as far as Islam is concerned, I do feel like he has at least one more fight at 155. I would prefer it to be Ilia Topuria, but if not Ilia, I think he could take either, preferably not Gaethje, but Oliveira or Arman Sarukian. The UFC doesn't seem too high up on that one. But my main problem is this whole dancing around 170. Bilal Muhammad, one of his training partners, maybe you could call him a friend. I'm not sure exactly what their relationship is, but they're closer.
I think they're friendly.
They're friendly at least, right? Him, Bilal Muhammad, and Coach Khabib have all said that they're not too high on the two of them fighting, but it seems like Islam would move up if Jack Della Maddalena gets the job done, or if Bilal Muhammad is no longer the champion at 170. And this is kind of what irks me, is if that's the case in some way or another, it seems like Islam would almost be rooting for Bilal to lose in that situation, for him to do what he ideally seems like he wants to do, is to move up to 170. So in that case,
it might not be an active rooting. It's probably more like a, hey, if I'm going to do that, I need that to happen. But I'm sure he's not sitting there wishing ill.
yeah, but in that case, it's just such an unclean situation. Even if Bilal Muhammad does lose and then Islam moves up and becomes champion, then Bilal is just kind of sitting there, a top welterweight in the world, and they're not going to fight again, So I think it just kind of overcomplicates the situation.
I'll
And
just add. Yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, and I think he just needs to make a choice on what he wants to do. Preferably, I think he needs one more fight at lightweight.
Yeah, I'll just add in that like Bilal Muhammad's like, I mean, he's a big betting favorite. Not that that means anything particularly, but like to say like, oh, I'm gonna wait for 170. It's like, well, like there's two contenders at 155. The way that I view it, right? And I know Scott, you might feel differently, but the way that I view it is like, how can you move off of 155 with Arman sitting there and with Ilya sitting there? I feel like those are two more than worthy contenders there. At least wait and see what happens. With Ilya and with Arman. Let's see, maybe they fight. Who knows? But I think that even if you say Bilal wins, but even if he loses, I wouldn't even want to see Islam move to 170. I'd rather watch him. Watching and anybody that hasn't watched it, go watch Arman Tsarzukian versus Islam Makhachev on the prelims years ago. I forget what card it was. But
2019 in Russia, I can tell you that.
there you go. So that was a really, really good fight. Like that was a really, really like competitive fight. So for me, I would rather, no matter what, I want to see Islam stick there at 155. I wouldn't even. I don't even really care what happens with Bilal and Jack Della Maddalena.
Yeah, I'm with you. Honestly, I would really not like to see him go to 170 just yet. There does seem to be way too much unfinished business at 155 pounds. He's just not all that active either. He's only fought twice in the last year and a half, and there's still nothing booked out. So we're talking about 9 month average of waiting time, and it's going to be even more once he actually gets in the cage. More like 10, 11 months, even if it's just International Fight Week. But yeah, I mean, definitely Arman Tsarukyan. I think that's a fight that ought to happen. I don't care that it's a rematch. It's a rematch of 6 years ago when Arman was still more or less a prospect. He is a full-fledged contender now. I understand he didn't make the weight. I understand the UFC might make him wait before they book him. And if they do, I'm going to go back to the idea I posited last week. Him against Paddy Pimblett. The winner of that at least produces a fight that's compelling anyway from a promotional perspective. So I think you're winning every which way if you try to go something like that. And that's the one where I would say, okay, I could see why you might put Ilia Topuria in there ahead of that fight because if they're not interested in getting Arman Tsarukyan in the cage right away for a title, there is Ilia Topuria with some star power there.
So, with all this talk about moving up weight classes, I think that a good thing for us to talk about would be who would you, out of all of the champions on the UFC roster, Scott, I'll start with you. Who do you want to see move up? Who makes the most sense in your eyes?
I'm actually going to go over to the women's side here, and I think probably I'm not getting a lot of fighting here. Zhong Wei Li at 115 pounds, she doesn't need to do anything more there. Realistically, if they wanted to give her Virna Jandiroba, there is one fight that at least makes some sense. There's a clear number one contender, but she's taking care of business at this weight class. I would love to see what she could do moving up at 125. She's not huge. She's certainly a really good size for 115, but I'm still curious about what would happen there. Give her that chance. I think she's earned it.
Eric, how about you?
How about if Marab beats Sean O'Malley? I think that would be interesting. I mean, obviously 145 is loaded, so I'm not saying that he could jump up and get a title shot immediately, but his cardio and his grappling ability is so elite and it's so good that I'd love to see how that played out with Alexander Volkanovski or any of the 145 contenders. You can do Aaron Pico, Yair Rodriguez just had a big win. There's a lot out there at 145. I feel like those divisions are so competitive right now. Those divisions are honestly in some of the better shape that they've ever been in my opinion. 145, 155 specifically are two amazing divisions with so much talent. I'd love to see Marab if he beats Sean O'Malley. Like he got Umar, like Peter Yan, like what else is there for him at 135? I would
Potentially
definitely.
a Corey Sandhagen if he comes out of this next card that's coming up pretty soon. If he wins that fight, that'd be an interesting one. But otherwise, I'm with you.
Yeah. I'm very interested if Marab gets past the Sugar Show here in Newark. 145 is definitely could look tasty for him. And then imagine Aljamain Sterling goes on a run, and then Marab at 145 is trying to avoid fighting his training partner again.
They're not gonna do it. They wouldn't
I
do
know,
it.
I know. But it's interesting that they could run into the same issue for the second time.
It's
would be something.
it's also interesting because I like that pick, but that's 2 months ago, not something that would have really been in the cards because Ilia Topuria was the 145-pound king. The two of them, very
That would have
good.
been a roadblock.
That would have been a roadblock. Okay, now mine, talking about clearing out your division, Mr. Alexandre Pantoja, that guy. I mean, everyone at flyweight seems like has fought each other, and the one king at the top of that mountain is Alexandre Pantoja. I think that he's earned every right to move up to 135 and challenge straight for the belt. There's not a whole lot going on as far as challengers. I mean, Kai France is allegedly going to be the next guy up. It seems like it's moving in that direction. It could not. Things could change. But that one doesn't really sound very exciting to me. He's had losses to people in the top 5 that Alexandre Pantoja has beaten. So just from a point of boredom, I would say, for or lack of seems like contendership at 125. If Muhammad Makhachev comes into that situation and the UFC can sign him again, 100% I'd like to see that fight at 125. I think that would be very interesting to finally get a resolution there, so to speak. But yeah, I think Pantoja is my pick.
I like the Pantoja pick there too. I think, I mean, realistically, he has cleared it all out. And I'm having trouble coming up with a fighter at 125 that I actually am like, I really want to see that first. And that, for me, that's kind of my bar. Is, when I look at Islam Makhachev, I'm like, I want to see that first. I don't say that when I look at Zhang Weili. I don't say that when I look at Alexandre Pantoja. I can maybe say that for Merab, but realistically, I'm still thinking, hey, maybe next year, These are guys, and not funny enough, all three of us, we named the lightest weight classes in the UFC, didn't we?
Yes, we did. Yeah.
Feels like it's the easiest to move up based on like power, because I feel like the difference between middleweight and lightweight's obviously 20 pounds. It's huge. And then the difference between light heavyweight and heavyweight, so, the power differences could be massive. One thing I had asked though, no love for Manel Kape versus Pantoja.
I'm okay with that. I'd be interested to see that fight as well. My worry with Manel Kape is, for whatever reason, whether it's him and oftentimes it's not him, somebody misses weight. He is like snake bit. So you almost worry anytime he gets booked in a fight. Is like, is it actually going to happen?
Yeah, I mean, but the thing is, Manel Kape, he lost that fight to Muhammad Makhachev. I know he's not in the picture right now, but that lingers in the back of my head. It makes me a little bit disinterested in that fight.
Yeah, honestly.
How do you guys feel about running through some other names? You mind if I shout out a few? Tell me if you like them or not.
Go for it.
Alrighty, so let's start. We already, if we start in the men's division, we already got through Pantoja, we got through Merab. That leaves 145. Mr. Alexander Volkanovski, he's gone up in weight before. How would you guys like to see him do it again?
Absolutely.
We're done. Look, I don't mean to be disrespectful, because he is really one of the greatest fighters that we've had in the last 15 to 20 years. He is incredible. But we've seen that, been there, done that. I want to see him pursue 145 GOAT. I think there's a realistic chance that he could win 2-3 more fights. And now we're starting to talk about he's got more title defenses than Jose Aldo, especially if you don't count the WEC. So I think which you should, but I'd be more interested in that. I think that's where he's got to stay.
You can't. Volkanovski's 5'6", cannot be at 155. I know he's thick as hell. He's got really big legs, but he's 5'6". That's too short.
I don't know.
I don't have a problem with that. That's not even the issue for me. It's more just, we saw him against the best, and we saw him competitive, and then we saw him much less competitive. I don't know what else there is. Different chance, maybe we're talking different story.
I think
the size is what I'm getting at. Like it's hard to absorb the power, and he obviously didn't do well with that. And now Ilya is at 155 too, so no.
I don't know. I might push back a little bit on that too, Eric. If you've ever heard Volkan and he's like, I've been fighting taller guys all my life, So he's used to it.
That's a good impression.
Thank you.
I don't know. I was gonna say it's not your finest. You've got some better.
No,
I have a pretty good DDP impression. We'll get to that. My mom's from Zimbabwe, so I got that South African accent.
All right.
Okay, let's move over to the women's weight classes. Valentina Shevchenko, 125. Possibly what do you guys think about her moving up to 135? There's some things that need to be settled there, but just proposing the idea. Scott, I'll start with you.
I am all about it. I think she's taking care of business at 125 every which way. Obviously, there was the weird series with Alexa Grasso here, but she finally solved that. I think we know who is better out of that one. There's no doubts left anymore. Realistically, if she can beat Firo in a couple weeks, who else is left? Probably the winner of Erin Blanchfield and Macy Barber. That's the only compelling thing left. I think you could start talking about her next year to move up to 135 if she wanted to. And the reason I would even say put it off that long is because now we've got such interesting stuff in the works at 135 with Kayla Harrison, with Juliana Pena, with Amanda Nunes coming back. Let that work itself out. And then maybe we're saying, hey, where is Valentina Shevchenko in that point? Then I want to see that fight against whoever comes out unscathed from that triumvirate there.
Yep, took the words right out of my mouth. There's too much at 135 going on right now for her to just jump in and I mean, she's like seemingly it could be 2 fights behind. If she jumped to 135 right now, she'd probably be 2 fights away from a title shot. So yeah, I would say definitely wait till next year, as you said, Scott. I like that. And then yeah, I mean, I'd be down if she can get through her next fight, by all means, more than fair, but wait a little while because there's so much going on 135. One of the more exciting, I want to say it's like the most exciting time to be a women's MMA fan. It's up there.
Not a bad point at all. I think there's not too much to argue there. Okay, we already talked about Islam at 155. Bilal Muhammad, who we've mentioned before. What do we think about a 185 move?
There's way too much work to do at 170. Let's wait on that one for quite a while, frankly. I know he's itching to do it. He's talked about it, but he's got some really good wins under his belt. Don't get me wrong, but there's still plenty to do, and I'm not in a rush.
If he even did that, the UFC would be so mad if he even broached the subject like, "Hey Dana, like I'm vacating 170 and I'm gonna move up." They'd be like, "Get out." Get out. They would be so upset. They would get mad whenever anyone tries to move up and weight. Anytime that Dana's asked about it, he's like, everybody stop moving up and weight. Like, stay in your weight class. He always says that. So, I don't know, when you look at it, it's like Sean Brady, Shavkat Rakhmonov, Jack Della's in front of him next. Like, there's so much at 170. I think the UFC would be pretty pissed if he even brought that up as a subject.
That's fair.
I would almost wonder if it's the other way because, sometimes I mean, you've talked about this before, Eric. You've alluded to this, the fact that maybe the UFC isn't the biggest fan of Bilal Muhammad being the champion. He's not the most marketable guy they have. He's not the most exciting guy. Frankly, I think he's an interesting character and I'm impressed with his style. But as far as the UFC goes, yeah, realistically, they'd probably be able to be happier with someone they could sell a little bit better. So if he said, "Oh, I'm going to drop the belt and move up," I feel like Dana White and them are being like, "Oh man, this stinks, but hey, go. Good luck at 185. Maybe just make a new title fight."
Fair. Fair. I mean, you could just feed him to the wolves at 185. If you're that frustrated by him, just feed him to, I mean, maybe Izzy, see where Izzy's at in his career. I mean, Kai Borhalo. I mean, come on.
Yeah.
I don't think he's going anywhere though. I think he's gonna stick here for a little bit.
Yeah. I mean, we'll see what happens after 315.
It's an interesting one to bring up though, Jake. It's an interesting one.
Yeah. And then just a couple more. 185 DDP. Let's say he gets past Hamzat, because I think that we all know that fight's got to happen first. If he does get past Hamzat, what would you guys think about him? That is a big if.
Huge if. Definitely a betting underdog there.
Yeah.
Again, it's a 20-pound weight discrepancy. I wish there was a 195 class, but there's not. It's a big weight discrepancy. I lean no for anybody going up for 185 that's not named Alex Pereira.
For me, it's really just the fact that I think he's years away from getting through the names that are in his way. There are a lot of middleweight contenders now. All of a sudden, it's kind of full with some pretty interesting guys.
Yeah, it used to not be.
Yeah, and I mean, realistically, we could do a whole lot with this weight class. I think we've got to slow the roll. I think he's a minimum 2 years away, which is quite a few title defenses, and that's a tough road to clear. However, let's say he gets through some of these guys. Now he's looking pretty impressive. These are names that if he clears out, you almost got to say, hey, let him try it.
Yeah, fair enough.
How do you guys look at, just in general, how do you guys look at these weight moves? Do you think that, like, Sean O'Malley's talked about this a lot, like he has to work really hard not to eat a lot so that he stays on weight and that like 135 doesn't get too difficult for him? And he said it's really hard. Like I've talked to him about it many times. So like, how do you guys view it? Like, do you think it's like fighters that are not careful enough with their diets, or is it their bodies changing as they get older? I mean, obviously there's not a one size fits all answer to every fighter's body, but like, how do you think that the UFC views like Islam Makhachev saying, I want to move to 170? when there's contenders at 155. Like, how do you view that? How do you think the promotion views that that type of movement?
I mean, there's a bunch of shades to that question, I guess. But as far as the example you gave with Islam, I would say for him, realistically, they don't want to have their belts held up, is I think the biggest issue. Outside of that, I don't know how much they realistically care. If they want to go up to 185, especially if they don't have a belt, hey, go for it. That's fine. Maybe it's not the greatest move for you, but if you're saying you want to do it, doesn't seem like they stand in the way as long as it doesn't hold up their own plans.
Yeah, and I think it's kind of on a case-to-case basis. Like Aljamain Sterling, for instance, it made sense for him because even if he had won that fight against Sean O'Malley, he had said the weight was just getting too much. I think like you kind of
It's
alluded to
huge.
it. You alluded to it earlier. Sometimes as you get older, it's just harder and harder to cut that weight. You just get a little bit bigger and bulkier. So sometimes it's a legacy thing. Sometimes it's just, dude, this is getting way too hard
Yeah,
to make
sometimes
this
I have a
weight.
hard time with it where it's like I can't tell if the fighter's just not been taking his post-training camp or pre-training camp life seriously. Like Conor McGregor was like, I'm gonna go 185 and fight Michael Chandler. And like you see that every now and then where it's like I'm gonna move up in weight. It's like because I hate cutting weight. It's like, okay, I hear that. But like you're diminishing your ability to win fights.
Yeah,
I tend to be personally, I love when fighters move up a weight class, especially when they look kind of big for the weight class, because realistically, there's a lot of great results of fighters moving up to the next weight class and doing great. Think of Robert Whitaker. I mean, he was this like sucked out welterweight. I didn't
Mhm.
think of him as all that impressive a guy. I know he won the Ultimate Fighter, but whatever. He goes up to middleweight. And we have a champion. We're talking about this guy 10 years later. It's really impressive what he's done. So many great stories like that. Dustin Poirier moving up from 145 to 55, and he becomes one of the greatest 155s that we've ever had, especially who's never won a title. I love it. I would much rather guys cut less weight, guys and gals cut less weight, move up to a more comfortable weight class, and then you're ready and you're fresh and you could go. And frankly, you don't see a lot of guys get totally overwhelmed by the size of somewhere else. If the skill is there, they tend to win.
the lighter man skill. I think it's a thing personally.
I do too.
Alrighty, so let's just round out this. Oh, actually, one more quick name. I feel like
We
this
got one
is.
more,
Yeah,
right?
we got one more. I feel like this is gonna be quick. But what do we think about Big Onk, as people are calling him today? Magomed Ankalaev moving up to heavyweight.
No,
Nope.
no.
I'll go first. Nobody at heavyweight besides John Jones and Tom Aspinall can really grapple. Not like Magomed Ankalaev can. So it's actually very interesting.
Jailton,
He's not the most
perhaps.
exciting fighter. Hit me. What do you got?
Jailton, perhaps, but
Dalton
Yeah,
Almeida, yeah.
yeah. I mean, he's definitely a good submission grappler, but we've seen him be taken down before. Ask Curtis Blades. And obviously Blades good grappler as well. Weight bully a little bit at that division. But I would say Ankalaev would have definitely a grappling advantage over more than half of the top 10 in at heavyweight. So I think it's interesting. He's just not an exciting fighter right now. So I don't know if UFC would probably go for it. Again, goes back to the issue that you brought up, Scott. Is like you're holding up light heavyweight. If you do that, he'd have to vacate.
I have no interest in Magomed Ankalaev touching heavyweight anytime soon. It's not that he couldn't do it, but I mean, there's just way too much to do. He literally just got the belt this year. There's a lot of contenders there in that kind of 4 to 5, top 4 or 5 range. I think we certainly have to see how he does in a rematch against Pereira as well. But realistically, let's play this out. Let's just say for hypothetical, he gets the title shot against Tom Aspinall because everything's held up right now with John Jones. He gets a title shot against Tom Aspinall. I don't know that he's going in there and looks like the favorite or anything like that. So, but even if that goes, but that's not happening anyway.
yeah. So there it is. That's our, and obviously John Jones and whoever wins at 135. There are no weight classes above them. I think
I want to know how he does against the super heavyweight champion.
who's
Tai Tuivasa is 300 pounds right now.
there we go. Yeah,
Yes.
that could have been a quick hits. Honestly, there we go. So this is taking
You
that
got it.
spot. Getting an early preview of quick hits. Okay, so now to kind of round out discussion to what we were talking about initially, International Fight Week. Let's just say this could all change literally while I'm editing this video. DDP, let's say he is injured or for whatever reason they can't make that Hamzat fight for IFW. Ilia Topuria and Islam Makhachev that fight cannot be made. Play Hunter Campbell for a second. Scott, I will start with you. What is going to save International Fight Week's main event?
I'll give you one that I think is, I don't know if I would call it conservative, but it almost feels like something they could possibly really make happen. And then I'll give you another one that I think maybe is a more outside chance, but I think they would hope it could make it happen.
Maybe wait,
First,
give us that one at the end in case one of us has it.
Sure, absolutely. So let's start with Alexander Volkanovski against Movsar Evloev. We have seen Volkanovski swoop in and save International Fight Week before, carry International Fight Week before. I would like to see that fight happen. I don't know if he wants to get in there that quickly. He does like to fight. He likes to collect paychecks. He hasn't been doing that as much lately, and he took his break. He came back. There's some success. Does he want to do it that quick? If he does, I think there's your answer. I think that's an easy one.
Eric?
If you got something strange in the neighborhood, Hunter Campbell's going to call Alex Pereira. Yeah, every time that the UFC's in a bind, if they go 0 for 2 on these International Fight Week main events, if they go 0 for 2 there, call Poatan, man. I mean, he's always willing to fight, and I know he said he wanted to take a break a little bit, but I mean, he's come off of world tours with, he's doing press conferences and interviews, just comes up off the couch and wins fights. So, I think that you could do worse than Pereira versus Ankalaev for the title in July. I don't know if I stole your thunder there, Scott, on your
You
record.
did, but you know what? I already had one. I can't take two. That's not fair.
So I feel the most slighted because those were the two that I had in my head. I was like, okay, if one of them mentions one of them, at least I'll have the other one. Nope, both
Brock
of them
Lesnar
gone.
versus Mark Hunt again.
There's just not a ton of options out there. We're really stuck because there were a lot of title fights at some of these other weight classes, and it's just too hard to turn these guys around. But I'm not giving up on the idea that we're gonna get Dricus du Plessis against Khamzat Chimaev at that one yet. It's not sounding great, but look, DDP was defiant today. He said there's no problem with a shin injury. I didn't pull out of any fight in June because we didn't agree to one. So that's the thing that kind of starts to say, okay, maybe it means that's not there. But he seems to be poo-pooing a lot of the smoke that was out there, all the rumors and that kind of thing. So that's why I take a wait and see approach, because hey, maybe we do get that fight, and all this hand wringing has been for nothing.
Yeah. Oh, and it's also entirely possible that Ilya is also competing on that card too. He seemed to have alluded to that, saying fight camp has started. He didn't say what it would be for, but
what if it's him and Islam? What if it's just happening anyway? Who knows?
I'd be a happy
there's
camper.
A lot of things we just don't know.
I would be a very, very, very happy camper.
I feel like the UFC is probably like, if Islam's like, I'm not fighting Ilya, if this is the case, we don't know this to be true, but if Islam's saying like at 155, Ilya doesn't deserve it, he hasn't fought before at 155, or hasn't, well, he actually has, he fought Jai Herbert, but he hasn't fought a contender at 155. I feel like the UFC probably would kick back and be like, Khabib fought Conor off of a 4-year layoff. Like, you're fighting Ilya.
Yeah. Also, if he moves up to 170, it's like Islam hasn't fought at 170. So
right. So it's like, then what's the fight there?
Yeah.
Sure.
I'm really hoping they're just making a bunch of noise to build up anticipation. It's like if you've ever seen South Park when Cartman like creates his own roller coaster park and doesn't let people in, and then everyone starts coming. He's like, his whole slogan is like, you can't come in, and that builds up interest. People want what they can't have, So I'm hoping that's what's going on, but we'll see.
I think South Park pioneered that idea, actually.
Yes, they did. The "you can't come in" approach, I believe, is what they called it. Alrighty, so I think that kind of rounds out this whole discussion about International Fight Week. We gave you a little bit of our thoughts on who would make sense to move up or not, so hopefully you enjoyed that. I feel a little bit better personally. I was coming into this with my head kind of spiraling about all these different permutations about what could be going on, but I feel a little bit better now.
We've calmed Jake's mind. That's good. I like that.
Yes. Now, looking back to last weekend, PFL 3 happened. 5 fights on that main card, 5 finishes. You got submissions, TKOs, and everything in between. Capped off by Impa Kasanganay getting TKO'd by Fabian Edwards, of course, the brother of Leon Edwards at middleweight. Scott, I'll start with you because you are a PFL fan as good as anyone. What is your main takeaway, or what are some of your main takeaways from Friday night?
I mean, I'm a fan of fighting in general. I just
Yes.
outlive myself to the UFC. But as far as the takeaways from this card, is I think we've been left with, obviously they were fun fights, fun finishes. It's created a very fascinating four-man picture at lightweight and at middleweight in their tournaments now for the semifinals when they're coming up. Frankly, I still gonna stand by what I said last week that the winner of Fabian Edwards and Impic Sanganay should still be the deserved favorite. I think we're still looking at that. That was a competitive fight. That was a really good fight for as long as it lasted, almost 2 rounds. I think the toughness there and the degree of opponent that he beat, that still makes him the favorite. But man, I'll tell you, Dalton Ross still looked really good, dude. He
Just
looked really good.
Yeah, Scott, you called it last week, man. Like, both of us, our two fights to watch were Dalton Rosta, and then our other fighter to watch was JJ Wilson. Both of them looked amazing in that fight. We were on those from the get. Question: all fights ended on the main card by decision, by finish. How much do you guys think you will have been up if you bet $10 on all 5 fights?
Ooh, oh, you mean like a
Oh, I
parlay
have no
for
idea.
every fight to go to finish?
Yeah, every fight was an underdog to go. I'll just tell you, you would be up almost $100, $98 in profit if you bet $10 on all 5 fights. And let me tell you that those fights, they all went and finished, which was crazy, but they were all like big underdogs to go to end inside the distance. It was like plus 160 or better for every single one. Fabian Edwards versus Impa Kasaganai was like plus 190. Clay Collard versus Alfie Davis was plus 250 to end by a finish, which is nuts to look back on.
It was what,
Um,
under a minute, right?
yeah, it was crazy. It was
You
I think it
bringing
was
that? I want while you brought that fight up, Eric. I just want to point out like, when Ian Parker, and I don't mean to throw Ian Parker under the bus, but he's talking about his bets before, and he was trying to kind of bring it a little bit closer to even money. Was saying, hey, let's get Clay Collard by double chance. It was decision or TKO, and then they're starting to talk about Alfie Davis. So he's a kickboxing champion. I didn't know, frankly, a ton about Alfie Davis going in, but I'm like,
yeah.
well, why don't we think he can win by TKO or decision with his hands? And then very quickly it proved to be right. So, again, not to throw Ian Parker under the bus there because hey, who knew? But that was just one thing that tipped me off. I was like, look at that. This guy's got some hands, got some kicks. You never know.
Yeah. It was really it was a crazy card. PFL does a good job building the fights. I think they just need to get better with like the promotion aspect of it, which is probably the hardest part of the fight business. But man, like there's some really good talent here. I want them to build it better, build the talent better. There's so much talent here. Fabian Edwards could be a legitimate contender in the UFC, and I mean, you said it, favorite to win the tournament. He looked better than ever.
And
Yeah.
then on the other side of the lightweight, I mean, Gaji Rabadanov, as we all found out on the broadcast, they've been saying his name wrong all along. It's Rabadanov. So he looked fantastic too. He goes out there and he gets a quick finish as well. So we're talking about. I have no reason to think he's not going to win this whole thing as well. But the aforementioned JJ Wilson getting a win, that's going to be an intriguing semifinal. So this is probably the set of fights that I'm most intrigued by going into the semifinals at this point for PFL.
It seems like them straying from the point system and doing away with all that. This is way more straightforward. They made the right call. And like you
Yeah,
said,
honest,
Eric,
honest.
we're rooting for the PFL. Like competition is good, So
Definitely rooting for the PFL, but I'm still frustrated that they changed the point system again. It drives me nuts. Like I just learned it.
Well, they never changed it. It was the same the whole way, and then they switched finally from the season system to a tournament system, which I think is hilarious because they're just taking everything from Bellator. They're taking the Grand Prix, they're taking the fighters. They're not giving all the fighters the fights, but they really got everything, and they've kind of almost lost the previous identity. But a lot of people have been calling for this. They've been making a lot of changes. People have been like begging them for. They got elbows. They got away from the season. They realistically, we now have a situation where the matchmaking is only a problem in the beginning of the tournament. After that, you just win your fights and you face who you face. So they get a little bit more leeway to kind of go in ways that I think people would prefer to see.
Scott, what have you heard? Have you heard anything about why Bellator fighters aren't fighting? Because I heard something, but I wanted to know if you did.
I've not heard anything in particular. I mean, everybody, more or less, in a lot of cases, frankly, it's just money. A lot of these guys make a lot of money and they don't really want to pay them. So if they have them fight, they got to pay them the contract they have. That's why they parted ways with guys like Gegard Mousasi, like Ryan Bader. These guys make a lot of money, and it's much easier for them to just say, maybe let's just buy it out and move on.
That's what I heard too. I heard that the contracts are so exorbitant that Bellator signed that PFL didn't realize it at the time of agreeing to buy out their roster. That they basically were like, oh, like Bader makes 500K to show or 1 million to show. And it's like we can't pay that for Ryan Bader. And it's like, well, there you go. That's why no one's fighting.
The biggest thing that PFL gained, and we don't have to go deep into this week because there's plenty of time for that. But I think the biggest thing that PFL gained in the purchase of Bellator was the absence of competition for that second spot. That's what they did. It was it a great financial move to buy all these things and then not know what to do with them and then kind of cast them out. I don't know. It's hard for me to say what their books look like, realistically speaking, but they don't have to worry about people's attention to Bellator anymore. It's all them when it's not the UFC. We don't even really have one much anymore. You get Raijin every now and then, and that's its own niche kind of thing. But PFL now doesn't have to worry about that. If they can find their lane and work that lane, it makes it a lot easier.
Alrighty, guys. I love the conversation, by the way. I've been a little quiet, but I've just been, very interested in what you two had to say. So I'm going to close us out because we got to move on. This weekend, UFC Kansas City. We got Ian Gary taking on Carlos Praches at Kansas City. Two rangy strikers. Ian Gary seeing more of his ground game coming out lately, but I feel like this one could be a very interesting battle if it does stay on the feet. Ian Gary's been known to kind of shake things up a little bit if things don't go into that direction. But Eric, I'm going to start with you because I love hearing how you break down fights. What do you think of this one?
Ian Gary versus Carlos Praches should be fantastic. What we've seen recently is everybody from that fight camp, the Fighting Nerds, led by Kyle Barhalio. Sorry about the pronunciation there,
That was
but
much better.
there
That
we
was
go.
much better. You're getting better every week, my dude.
It was bad last week, so whatever. I'm working on it. Yeah, what we've seen out of the Fighting Nerds is that they are getting a lot better really quickly. So every time that we see them, it's like one installment. It's like, okay, he's getting better, he's getting better, he's getting better, and then it's like, oh my God, like here's a test, and he's doing really, really well. Now Praches doesn't have the best, strength of schedule. Ian Gary's fought, Shavkat Rakhmonov, right, and he did really well in that fight. So my issue with Carlos Praches being, close in terms of odds, my issue with it is, he's beaten like Neil Magny and like all love. Neil Magny's one of my favorite fighters. In terms of betting, he's made me a lot of money. I love Neil Magny, but he's not on the same level of Ian Gary. So I think that the striking is gonna be very interesting here. I would give the grappling advantage to Ian Gary as after we've seen what he's done in terms of the grappling, and I think that cardio wise, I'd give the advantage to Ian Gary. Praches is definitely going to be very dangerous early. He could definitely, if he can damage Gary early, and maybe either, I mean, you don't even have to finish him. If you can damage him enough early, you'll be able to get through the next 3 rounds if he's kind of like a shell of himself coming in from what he came in as. So this is gonna be a very interesting fight. The line is almost a pick 'em. This is a big fight for the division. Shout out Ian Gary for taking this fight on short notice. Awesome, a fighter's fighter, and could be a big star if he's able to get through Praches here.
Listen, here's a big advantage you didn't touch upon with Ian Machado Gary, though, is the fact that he is really terrific at coming up with and executing. Executing is the key. Game plans. Very effective game plans. And I think that is going to be the biggest factor in this fight. I think him and his team, they will probably have come up with a very effective way to try their best to neutralize a lot of what we've seen with Praches' meteoric rise, frankly. I mean, he was 10-6 at one point. He's now 21-6, 4-0 in the UFC, 4 finishes. Nothing's gotten to the third round. But I think we've probably got enough tape on the guy now. He's not a prospect. He's got almost 30 fights. And Machado Gary, I mean, I imagine him and his team, they've come up with a way that they can try to neutralize him, especially over the course of 5 rounds. So I'm really intrigued by this fight, but I think that is the key there.
The team there is going to be awesome. The Fighting Nerds versus Gary, like, it's going to be awesome.
Okay, cool. So, listen, lots of stuff going on at welterweight. That picture is as interesting as ever. So, hopefully, this one will add some clarity. Maybe not. Maybe it makes it more confusing. But Scott, I'll start with you. What is your fight to watch outside of the main event?
You know, I it's funny because this fight could go a couple ways, and one of them is not going to be a lot of fun. But I'm going to highlight Michel Pereira against Abus Magomedov because if it ends in 5, 6 minutes, it's going to be wild. It's going to be fun. It's something crazy could happen. You just never know. It might not be the most technical fight, but it could be a whole lot of fun. If it goes longer than that, I don't know if we're gonna enjoy it, but that's what I'm intrigued to see what happens out of that fight.
How about you, Eric?
Yeah, so for me, I'm on the Giga Chikadze versus David Onama fight. I was talking about it last week. I'm very excited for this fight. Two stand-up specialists. Giga's obviously he's been up and down throughout his career. He at one point was training towards a title shot, and then he had that fight against Calvin Kattar that we all know how that went. But that's going to be such a fun fight. I think that we'll get to it in my three bets in 3 minutes, but very excited for that fight. It's gonna be a fun one.
Yeah, before we get to Eric's three bets, 3 minutes, let's almost round out this card by going to Scott's event rating. We've got us eagerly waiting. So what do we have?
This one comes out to a 37, a pretty solid
Wow.
number for a fight night. This is definitely something that exceeds almost everything you'll ever see out of the Apex. There is a clear demarcation to the way they build cards when they go on the road. They are definitely looking to get better quality fighters throughout the card. So there's a deepness here. We've got 20 fighters in the top 100 on Fight Matrix. The main event may not be the highest of caliber because Praches is still not a prospect, but he's still a little bit more on the come up and has not faced that level of caliber opponent like Eric mentioned, whereas Machado Gary has. But realistically, it's still a good fight for a fight night, especially. And it's deep on this main card. It's good. It's solid. This is everything that you really want a fight night to be. It's a can't miss fight night. Let's put it that way.
Alrighty, thank you for that, Scott. And with that, let's round out this card with Eric for your three bets in 3 minutes. Ready to go?
Absolutely, let's do it. Three bets, 3 minutes. We're gonna start in the prelims here. And it's one of the women's fights, and I think that women's fights they've been ending by finishes more recently, but I'm more interested in the long term trajectory here. Women's fights end in decision 39% of the time. So that brings us to Jacqueline Amarim versus Polyana Viana. That one is plus 240 to go the distance, and that is about 28% chance of going the distance. So the way that I look at it is you're getting an 11% value here on these two fighters at 115. Neither of these fighters are decision fighters per se. Polyana Viana has been submitted a bunch of times. Amarim's obviously a very good submission specialist. Understanding all of that, I'll still take the 11% edge. That's the way that I view it. I'm going to go Polyana Viana versus Jacqueline Amarim to go decision at plus 240. That's my favorite bet of the prelims. And I had talked about Giga Chikadze versus David Onama. I love Giga Chikadze. I always have. Now, what I think David Onama could look to do is grapple, right? Giga Chikadze is a very, very good kickboxer. His kicks are nasty. So for me, I'm looking at Giga. I definitely want to back Giga here. Money's been coming in on Giga already. I already said last week I gave you Giga Chikadze plus 175. He's down to plus 150 now, which is a pretty sizable move. That means sharp money's coming in on Giga. For me, it feels like there's going to be more sharp money to come on him. I think this will end actually closer to a pick'em, maybe plus 120. But I think Giga chops down his front legs. And I think Giga definitely either, if he doesn't finish him in the first round, which I think is totally live here, I totally think Giga could get a finish here early. David Onama, I like him a lot. I think that he's a fun fighter. He's been big underdogs to worse talent in his UFC career. To see him as a minus 200 favorite against a talent like Giga, that's a little bit too much for me. So I'm going to go Giga money line plus 150. If you want to sprinkle on first round knockout at 10-1 or better, I'm totally fine with that. And then we're going to go with the main event here. Ian Machado Gary, he's fighting Carlos Praches. I think that, and Scott, you brought this up already, the two fighters, they match up, and it's not just the fighters, it's also the coaching, right? So for me, and I think that Ian Gary here probably gets it done more often than not, but I think that the odds to go to decision here in a 5-round fight, I think there's going to be two brain surgeons working against each other and kind of a chess match playing out throughout the fight. So for me, I'm looking at this fight to go to decision with a little sprinkle on a long shot. Praches by decision is plus 750 on DraftKings right now, that's way higher than what you've seen on any other sports book. Like circa all the pro sports books in Vegas have that closer to plus 500. Hopefully the plus 750 is still out there by the time that this comes out. But I bet it personally. I'm going to go fight goes decision with a tiny sprinkle on Praches by decision plus 750. Those are my three best bets of the card. Like you said, must watch stuff, and I'm really excited.
So with that, let's close out this weekend and get to some of the other little pieces of news through this week, some quick hits, if you will. Eric, can you run us through the first couple items?
The McGregor show is maybe coming back here against Michael Chandler. Maybe, I mean, he tweeted that he was like, we have unfinished business. I don't know what that business is. Maybe it's whiskey business. Maybe it's tequila business because Michael Chandler has a tequila business. But, Michael Chandler versus Conor McGregor, they could be reuniting for a fight. Who knows? Probably not. Conor might have been drunk when that happened. Who knows? And then another interesting note. Later this month, Jose Aldo is fighting Canadian fighter. I forget his name.
Name is a hobby.
Yep, there you go. George St. Pierre, he fights with up in Canada, and George St. Pierre's one of his coaches around with Faraz as a hobby, and Jose Aldo versus Jose Aldo is going to be fighting in that card, and GSP is going to be cornering against Jose Aldo, which I think is interesting. Back in the early mid 2000s, these are two guys who are at the top of the Apex.
The goats.
Yeah, Apex, and they're coaching against each other. It's very interesting.
Alrighty, sounds good. Thank you, Eric, for that. Scott, we've got some homework to go over.
Yes, we do. I assigned for this week Clay Guida against Diego Sanchez. Did you guys watch?
I did. Eric?
First time, long time. I watched it a long time ago, but every time I watch it, it's like, how did this fight go to a decision? It's crazy.
Yeah, that first round, I mean, the first minute or 2 minutes or so, it was literally just a slugfest up against the cage. Clay Guida, that guy is one of my favorite fighters to watch, and for good reason. He just goes out there and puts it all on the line. He does not care what's going on in there. He's gonna throw a fist at you. And yeah, like you said, that it's hard to make up how that went to a decision. It was like that scene in Austin Powers where he's like, "Why won't you die?" He just like keeps surviving stuff, and yeah. I mean, I think the judges got it right. I was hearing on the broadcast that they thought that there'd be potential for a draw. Scott, I'm curious to hear your thoughts on maybe some of that, but
I mean, in quick summation, I think there was a lot of misunderstandings about what 10-8s were at the time, and frankly, we still have that problem. But yeah, Joe Rogan was kind of floating that maybe it was a 10-8. You didn't really see 10-8s much that often unless someone was nearly dead, and frankly, that's not what it was. So that was not going to happen in 2009. Let's put it that way.
Fair enough. Alrighty, so what do we have next?
Next up, I am assigning to you guys BJ Penn against Joe Daddy Stevenson, UFC 80 in 2008 in Newcastle, England. This was for the vacant lightweight title after Sean Shirk was stripped following a failed test for steroids. Was originally an interim title fight. Sherdog had them lower in the top 10, but Penn, realistically, he was already considered to be much better than that by a lot of people. He'd been the UFC welterweight champion for a time. He'd been actually in the top 5 at Fight Matrix when you go back and look at that as well. And he'd only just come back to lightweight, so this was part of the problem. He was fighting as high as 191 pounds against Lyoto Machida in an open weight fight before Machida was the 205-pound champion. So he did a lot of crazy stuff. The world was different than you guys were watching, you know what I mean? Way back. So that there's some interest here, especially in the BJ Penn perspective. I hope you guys enjoy this fight.
Thank you.
I actually haven't seen this one. I've seen most of the ones that we've done, but I actually haven't seen this one, so I'm interested.
You guys are in for a treat.
First BJ Penn fight for me. I know you're very livid about that, Scott.
I kind of am, yeah. But we're gonna rectify that. I got a shout from my buddy. Who I said to him, listen, give me one BJ Penn fight to make someone an instant fan. And he said this one, and I was thinking this too, but this is where he pointed. So I'm sure you guys will enjoy.
Alrighty, and speaking of things from way back when, what happened this week in MMA, or this day in MMA, as I understand?
It was, in fact, this day in MMA. Yes, 15 years ago, April 24, 2010, UFC presents Aldo versus Faber, which was what we really know today as WC 48. It was all kind of like a presentation thing, had to do with broadcast deals and stuff like that. But it was the first and only pay-per-view that in the promotion's history, in WC history, before the UFC fully absorbed it, still known today to be the highest grossing pay-per-view in mixed martial arts history. So many great fights. There was two championship fights. The debut in a losing effort of Demetrius Mighty Mouse Johnson at the high promotional level. He went on to greater and bigger things. So much to watch. This really was a landmark event in so many ways, and just a fascinating card. Honestly, go back and watch the whole thing one day if you're bored. It's a really good card.
Alrighty, perfect. I think that's it for me. How about you guys?
I'm good. I had a nice time.
Alrighty, we love to hear that. Alrighty, thank you guys so much for watching. Scott, Eric, I will see you next week, and you back home. I'll see you next week as well. Bye.